Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman. And if you haven't already, you can go to umbrex.com/unleashed and sign up to get the newsletter for this show in case you don't want to listen to every episode, but at least be informed about the episodes that are coming in. And sometimes I send some bonus material there. So umbrex.com/unleashed. I'm excited to be here today with Christian Hyatt, who is the founder of Risk 360. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Will. Good to be here. I'm excited.
So, Christian, when you talk to a chief information security officer today at call it a sub-enterprise firm, a firm that's, just below the Fortune 500 in size, but bigger than a, middle market private equity firm. Talk to CISOs at firms that size. What are the top 3 or 4 things that they're most worried about right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of things they're worried about. And in terms of risk, there's things, but actually a hot topic right now is the business environment. So a lot of times when people think about cybersecurity, they think about ethical hackers, they think about the bad guys trying to break in. But what we're seeing from a market perspective right now is if you go back 24 months, and everyone's aware of this, the economy was hot, venture capital firms were, money was free, it was easy to get. Now what we're seeing across our private equity portfolio companies, as well as our big customers, is there's a lot of pressure to do more with less, to be very efficient with their budgets. So the big thing that they're thinking about is there's all these threat actors out there. There's all these bad guys. There's all this cybersecurity regulation that they have to navigate. So how do they do all of that efficiently while reducing budget, but still doing it with high quality? So that's kind of a big picture topic. The other things they're worried about are the nation state actors like Russia, like China, like phishing campaigns. Everyone is probably aware because of when we're recording. Last week, there was a CrowdStrike incident where the airports all went down and there was a lot of blue screens. So they're worried about that kind of stuff. So just a lot of very real threats that they're concerned with the added bonus of needing to do that very efficiently to help their companies achieve profitability.
Yeah. Now, on the CrowdStrike thing, my understanding as a non-expert was that was actually not really a cybersecurity issue, right? But that was more of a routine update that CrowdStrike pushed out to its users, and it turned out to be have some errors in it. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I think being conflated with the security issue because it was a security company. But the bottom line is a lot of these security tools, they need kernel access. So they basically have to have root access, the deepest access that you can get in your operating system to be able to do the things that they need to do. And when they pushed out an update, it impacted the operating system at its core, which everyone in the universe is running. And that's why we saw the airports and everything else. So this is that unique bridge of cybersecurity and information technology coming to a head here.
Yeah. Now, a lot of the listeners of the show are independent consultants and who are not, cybersecurity experts, but are serving clients. And it would be helpful for us to know what are some questions to be asking clients or just warning signs of things you might observe where you might kind of raise that to the client's attention and concern and say, look, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I noticed this. And maybe we should call in, a cybersecurity expert to discuss that with you. So what are some of the either the questions to ask or things that someone might observe?
Yeah. So just for a little bit of context for people who don't know me, so Risk 360, I started as a sole entrepreneur. So I remember those days when I was out there doing the work, and now Risk 360 is about 60 employees, so still relatively small organization. So that journey of scaling a business and trying to ask smart questions to get more work and add value any way you can, I'm very familiar with. And to answer your question directly, like some of the things that I would be asking if you're a management consultant is, I think that for the most part, no matter how you're advising a client, they're looking for someone to talk to, and they're looking for someone who's a good listener, and they're not operating off fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So I think one thing that you could do is offer a level of calm to your customers, because the good news is a lot of the big enterprise tools that our customers are using, like Office 365, like the Google Suite, they have so much built-in security that it covers a lot of the bases. So if I'm an independent consultant, no matter what I'm doing out there, I'm probably listening for how well implemented their tools are, listening for the business problems they're having, listening for if their customers are asking for security assurance. So, for example, if you're working for technology companies, you know, they probably can't do business in certain industry verticals unless they have a way to articulate their security story. So it directly impacts their revenue. And then just offering them some blocking and tackling advice about implementing best practices on their existing tool set and spreading security awareness and blocking and tackling like email security, things like that. So just listening for how security is impacting their business and how they should be investing in it is, I think, where I would start if I wasn't a cybersecurity expert.
Yeah. Well, take the next level down a question. So let's say that we are, doing some due diligence on a company, and we maybe there's not a budget to have a separate technology assessment. So someone wants to ask some just the 80-20 type questions. Talk about email security. What are some questions that you'd want to ask just to have an indication if there might be something worth digging deeper?
Yeah, so if I'm thinking from a M&A perspective, so a lot of the companies that we work with are kind of previously VC backed. They're either acquiring a bunch of companies or they're being acquired. So some of the red flags that I think through that companies often don't think about is if it's a product company, how sustainable and scalable is that product? Because sometimes there's a group of engineers that are holding that thing together, and if they went away, the product is no longer the flagship product that you know and love. So just asking some smart questions about application security, product scalability. Is it cloud-based? Is it on-prem? And just understanding their mastery of their own product and its ability to scale without the team that is there. The other thing that I think will tell you a lot about a company pretty quickly is just how are they treating their own internal infrastructure? Are they cloud-based? Are they using typical email tools that you would expect? Or are they doing something that would make you raise your eyebrows? That seems a little non-traditional. There's also a lot of integration risk. So between the two parties, if I'm the acquiring firm, I'm thinking about, can they integrate with me? Like we had one client recently that had aging infrastructure. They were literally on AS400, which is a very old system. And one of the issues that came up during the due diligence was basically they were going to have to do a complete infrastructure refresh when they moved them over to get them onto the new systems, and that was going to impact the cost. So just thinking through little things like that, I think go a long way during the diligence phase.
Okay. What about for our listeners for their own practice? A lot of independent consultants and as well as folks that are running boutique firms with a handful of employees. Talk to me about some of the cybersecurity precautions that an independent consultant should take, or that someone who has 2 or 3 employees or 10 employees should be taking.
Yeah. The good news is there's an abundance of tools at that size. Like there really are some good tools that you can use. My first piece of advice is probably something like G Suite or Office 365. They have excellent built-in tools for file sharing, for email security, for internal messaging, all the stuff that you would typically need to do as a small business owner. What we see is a lot of the cybersecurity attacks actually originate with email. It's someone trying to send that phishing email in, get you to click a link so something happens. And tools like G Suite and Office 365 take care of a lot of that natively. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is your endpoint device, so your laptop or the computer that you're using. Install a really good antivirus tool, something like, funny enough, CrowdStrike is known as a really good one. Sentinel-1, something like that, some kind of advanced endpoint device management tool. That'll take you a long way. That way, if you do click that link, it can get stopped at the endpoint level. And then just some blocking and tackling, like thinking through how you're going to share your files. Use something like a OneDrive or a Dropbox. That's a big deal. And the last thing I'll throw out there is just think through anytime money is changing hands. How do you do billing? How do you do invoicing? Because what the bad guys like to do is intercept your PDF because you're sending a PDF invoice, change the routing number in the bank, and now your customer's charging or sending money to the wrong bank. So little things like that. So to summarize, use a good tool like G Suite or Office 365, focus on endpoint device hardening, and then identify anywhere that data or money is changing hands and like focus in on some blocking and tackling security and processes around that. If you do that as a small business, like 90% or 95% of your risk are covered.
Mm. And I imagine, one other thing to do potentially would be maybe once a month, uh, create an actual offline backup of your key files in case you do get attacked by one of the ransomwares. You're like, okay, I have everything on an external hard drive. It's not plugged in.
Yeah, you absolutely could do something like that. The thing I didn't mention was if you're using Office 365 or G Suite and you're already storing your files in the cloud, like OneDrive or something like that, there's some tools integrated. Like one example is there's something called spanning for Office 365 that will create backup copies of your cloud storage. So if you do get hit with ransomware, you already have natively a cloud solution built in. So really explore the full suite of your options if you're using G Suite or Office 365 or any tool like that, because they've kind of went through the list of the biggest risk and offering solutions that are kind of built in or easy to tack on to help a small business owner get coverage.
Now, talk to me about um, if you have a few employees, and maybe even for yourself, you want to get them raise their awareness level
Yeah.
of the dangers of phishing. And I think there's some tools out there that can periodically send you, a white hat, but phishing to sort of test how well you and your employees are at not clicking on things. Um, Talk to us about some of those tools that can just sort of periodically make sure people are not clicking on things. And then if they do, it's not the end of the world because it was just an internal test.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what we do because I think we fit the archetype. So one thing that happens to our employees like clockwork is when we get a new employee join Risk 360, they will often get a text message or email, typically a text message from Christian Hyatt from me. It's not from me, but it's someone trying to get them into a scam. The classic, hey, send me some gift cards because I'm in a meeting and you're sending gift cards to a fraudulent individual. The trouble we have is, let's say we're hiring someone right out of college. We have a pretty flat org structure. They actually have spoken to me, so there's a world where maybe I am sending them a text, and they're very eager to join our team and make a good impression. So they might want to respond. But at that point, they haven't even went through any of our security awareness training. They haven't even had a chance to do any of the training stuff, and that's where we're having most of the problems, and that's where most of our customers have problems. So if you're a small business, I think the best thing to do is not the tooling, but just to create a culture of awareness and vigilance. Like what we do with candidates is we let them know in advance, hey, look, this might happen. Don't feel dumb to ask. If anything seems weird, send us a message on Slack or call me and ask. If I'm asking you to send money, and because we kind of have the culture where people don't feel like they're going to be punished for asking a weird question, then they'll do that. So my opinion, what I've seen work is a conversation goes really, really far. If you need to take it a step above that, there's absolutely some great tools out there. There's one called Curricula that I like, that's really friendly. This is security awareness training, and others that are very low cost. You're talking about a few bucks a month per user. They can do all sorts of security awareness training. They can do phishing campaigns. If you're using any of the HR platforms like a Workday or a Gusto or some of those have some training already built in too that you can deploy to your company. The other thing I'll mention is nothing like a good YouTube video. There's so many people out there putting out good content, including Risk 360, just trying to spread the word. So you could probably go out there and just find a free video and make all of your employees watch that as part of training too. We've seen that be more effective than you'd think, actually.
Hmm. Um, let's turn to your firm. So you
Yeah.
started, you said, as an independent consultant 8 years ago.
Yeah.
You now have 60, that's 60 employees. Very impressive growth. Talk to us a bit about the trajectory of your firm, how you have, what were the stages that you went through from, you maybe started by hiring a couple, subcontractors, and then you hired your first employee, and just sort of walk us through the growth of your firm and the stages that it went through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back a little further. So like neither of my parents graduated high school. So I kind of had a green field of what I was going to do. I had a mentor that uh, found out I got accepted. I'm in Atlanta, so University of Georgia is the big school here in Georgia. They found out I got accepted to that, and they were like, "You have to go to University of Georgia." And he was so convicted about it that I did, and I'm glad I did. Went there. I got an undergrad in management information systems. Out of undergrad, I joined a big consulting firm. It was Grant Thornton. It was one of the big CPA firms. I was kind of in their consulting arm doing some cybersecurity assessments, but always wanted to start a business. Had another mentor that said I should get my MBA. I took him up on that, went to Georgia Tech here in Atlanta and got my MBA. And then before the program was over, I had a partnership opportunity at a CPA firm, or I could go start my own business. And I always wanted to start my business. So I was like, look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give it a shot. I had no aspirations on growing anything too big, but I wanted to say I tried. My backup plan was I can always go get a regular job. So I jumped out I had one client. It was a $30,000 client with no recurring revenue attached to it. It was a one-off engagement, but I told myself, hey, this is my opportunity to give this thing a shot. And then from there, I can't even hardly tell you how I did it. It was LinkedIn outbound. It was people referring work to me. It was me over delivering and the client deciding to do more work. And slowly this work accumulated. And I did a couple smart things. The couple smart things I did is one is I very early on got clients in a retainer model where they were engaged with me for multiple years on a month-to-month basis rather than billing hourly or charging per project. And I think that really changed the relationship between me and my clients because instead of them treating me transactionally, they thought of this as a long-term sustainable relationship, a more strategic relationship. And that also bought me some time and some security to kind of productize my suite. So instead of consulting on 1,000 different things, I really narrowed down into a few things in cybersecurity that I felt had some great demand. And I packaged those services for the most part as multi-year deals, recurring revenue, and I focused in on things that needed to happen over and over again, annuity-based work.
Give us some examples. What did
So
you
like audits. So people need, like for example, one big problem in cybersecurity is you have to do an annual cybersecurity assessment. So I really centered a lot of my business around that. I also learned that organizations have huge compliance requirements. So some of the acronyms are SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or PCI, and these are annual audits. So we became an audit firm that could do the work. Then we realized that managing those programs were terrible. Everyone hated it. So there was a market for outsourcing that where someone could manage it on your behalf. So we did that. Then we realized everyone was doing that in Excel spreadsheets. And we said, let's build a SaaS platform to help them do that. And then we invested in the SaaS platform and started selling that as a subscription. So today our service is a tech-enabled service where sometimes companies are outsourcing their whole program to us because they need the human labor. And often they need the SaaS platform to help do that too. And that helped operationalize our business. So number one, I started a business in a growing industry. I was fortunate in that. That wasn't because I was smart. So cybersecurity is booming. And number two, I think I made some smart strategic decisions early on to scale the business around recurring revenue streams, and then and just over delivering, and now building a good culture. It's a little different now. Like it's all about leading through other people, so the strengths are a little different. But early on, I think it's those few things which felt risky at the time because there were times where I was saying no to big contracts because they didn't fit within my revenue stream. And I really centered around those few activities that were meaningful to me. But I think that made all the difference.
Yeah. So talk to me about how and at what point did you start transferring the responsibility for business development off of your shoulders to other members of your firm? And how did that happen? That's one of the tougher transitions for a lot of independent consultants to make. They'll hire a few people who are doing work where they're the partner, but then actually getting people who themselves are rainmakers is challenging.
Absolutely. So one of the books that had a lot of influence on me was, and I'm sure everyone's heard of this, is Gino Wickman wrote a book called Traction, the Entrepreneur Operating System. It's really popular for small business owners. If you're a small business owner, I highly recommend that book. But in that book, he talks about this stage of business, this kind of the black hole of business. It's somewhere around the 10 to 15 people mark. Usually $2 to $3 million in revenue is a common part. And the reason that's the black hole of business is because at that point, you're typically very profitable. And as the owner of the business, you're probably making great money. But you're also probably wearing a lot of hats and doing more work than you've ever done. So it's in the same way, kind of a miserable point. So you have to make a decision at that point. Are you going to stop growing here and just enjoy the fruits of your labor? Or are you going to take risk for a second time and build a leadership team, which effectively means reducing profits and training yourself on a new skill set because you're no longer a great consultant. You got to become a leader at that point. Hire a leadership team like a sales organization, hold them accountable, probably take a hit on profits in the short term and bank on yourself blowing through that black hole and getting to the next stage of business. So that's where it happened to me. But as being part of mastermind groups, talking to other entrepreneurs, that is where it happens. And it's really a conscious decision for most entrepreneurs that they have to decide what they want out of their business, if they're going to scale through it or if they're going to be okay at that stage.
Yeah. And tell us so how many employees did you have at that point when you had, were fully tapped out and had to enter the black hole? And get us into the specifics of what did you do? Did you hire one head of sales? Did you hire two or three people at once? Or
Yeah.
start with someone senior or a sales development rep? Like, how did you actually,
Yeah,
proceed?
absolutely. I'll tell you how I did it. I don't know if it's the right
Yeah.
way, but so we were about 10 or 15 people, and we hired a guy who was my co-founder is a West Point grad. So he knew a guy out of Boston that was also an Army person that he said, "Hey, this guy's just excellent. Knows nothing about cybersecurity, but just a great high business acumen type of person. We'll find a spot for him." So we hired that guy. We turned him to an ops manager, and we didn't even know what that meant. But what he did is, as we just started hiring people, we started betting on great people. That sounds kind of crazy, but we just started hiring great leaders. The very first strategic hire I made was Tim. He became our COO. Then one of the biggest players in our space, had a VP of sales that was wanting to get back into the startup space and was introduced. He wanted way more money than we can afford because he was a chief revenue officer. But he was excellent. He knew he was a good individual contributor, but also a great leader. And that felt like a very risky hire. But we brought him on board. He helped us build a sales function. And he compliments me by saying I'm the best sales guy he's ever worked with. So it wasn't like I stepped away from sales at that point. I was still very much in sales. And then we also hired not long after a head of people, which seemed very early, but we were so focused on culture, and we have a strategic partner with Georgia Tech to hire top students out of there. And when we were, 15 or 20 people, those seemed like crazy hires that were way too early. But almost all the success that I can say that we've had from then till now is because I have people that are really, really smart pushing me to think more like a leader and helping me see around the corner. And there's so many decisions that I wouldn't have made on my own because I was either too risk averse or it was a blind spot that I couldn't have made without those excellent people in the room. And I
Tell us,
acknowledged that that was a risk and it was scary, but
yeah,
that's how we blew through it.
tell us about some of those decisions that they helped you make.
Um, well, I'll start with Jess, who's our head of people. So we revisited our whole benefits package. So early on, I was afraid to pay people too much, which seems weird, thinking about it now. But like, I thought it was a win to bring someone in at a great rate. Like, if I could get top talent for the least amount of salary I could pay, I would consider that a win. That was a great hire for me. But that was very immature thinking. So one of the things Jess did when she came on board is she helped us rethink our whole benefits package. So we have a sabbatical program now. We offer unlimited PTO. We pay 100% of employee healthcare cost. We have 6 weeks for dads who have babies, 3 months for moms who have babies. We have a 401k match. We have a profit share program. So all these benefits that we've accumulated over time. And we looked at pay bands for the first time. We were like, what is the market rate for these people? And we decided to pay above the average so we could attract top talent here in Atlanta. And that was another very scary move that I was skeptical of at the time, but that functionally helped us get and attract excellent people. And more importantly, arguably, is it helped our retention. Like, we have very high retention in terms of employee retention here. So that was a scary move. Investing in our SaaS platform, and we bought a CTO. So that functionally meant I was going to take less salary as the owner of the business and plow it back into the business to build the SaaS platform. Our team all agreed to do that, gave me assurance and comfort that that was a good decision. So those are like two big decisions that have made huge impacts on our business.
Hmm. Hmm. And then tell me about the structure of your top team now. So it seems like you have a head of people, chief technology officer, head
Yeah.
of sales.
Yeah. So We might be top heavy. I don't know. So 60 people, here's how it looks. So we have what we call an Excel, or we have an ELT, executive leadership team. There's 6 people on that. That's me, the CEO. There's my co-founder, who's the president. We have a head of people, chief operating officer, chief revenue officer, and a chief technology officer. So that's how that is structured, which really frees me up because as a CEO, now what I do is I focus on a few things. I focus on mission to metrics. So what is the vision? Where are we trying to get in 5 years? Then breaking that up into what we're doing this year, and then all the KPIs and measurables and making sure everyone understands that. So being absolutely clear, if you ask anyone in our business, any 60 people, they know where we're going in 5 years, they can repeat it, and they know what we're doing this year. So just harnessing the team's energy to do that. I work a lot on brand equity. So I'm just the mouthpiece of the company, like this podcast, just trying to tell people that we're here. So a lot of social media, a lot of podcasts, a lot of speaking events. And then also my other job is just making sure the ELTs run in the same direction. So I hired a great leadership team. I manage them. I make sure we're all motivated. We all have the same vision, that conflicts managed. So that's my new responsibility. I give that context because for a business owner, sometimes it's scary. Like, what should I be working on?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how my role has transformed over time. And I do very little, well, actually, I do no work execution anymore from a consulting perspective. And then beneath that, we have an extended leadership team that includes our ELT, plus it includes our department heads. So, for example, we have a head of engineering, we have a head of sales under our CRO. And then this might be interesting because this took us a long time to think about it, is we created something called an initiative review board that's a governing body. So what we realized is that there was all this pent up stuff that people wanted to get done, like a project or a tool or whatever they wanted, but they had no space to ask for that outside of budget season. So on a monthly basis, we have an opportunity for people to bring up stuff that wasn't previously budgeted and make that request. So maybe it's a new tool they want or an initiative where they need multiple departments. And it kind of it was a pressure relief valve for us to get some strategic initiatives off the ground. And then beneath that, we have managers and consultants. Everybody else is delivering consulting work, essentially.
Yeah. I want to get back to something you mentioned, which was back when you were an independent. I think it was when you were solo, maybe when you had a few employees, you were doing LinkedIn outbound and sort of cold outreach. A lot of people try that and don't have a lot of success. How did you use LinkedIn outbound? And give us some tips and tricks here on how you made that successful.
So how I use it today is different than how I used it then. So let me tell you how I use it today, and I'm going to give you my best tip for how I did it then, the thing that worked a lot. So how I use it now is one of our marketing philosophies is out-teach the competition. So we're really, I'm not trying to be an influencer. I want to teach good concepts to people and add value. I really, really focus on that. So anything that I write, any content that I produce, be it a video or a white paper, is focused on adding value. And I mean that sincerely. And hopefully enough people see that, and then they're like, they want to do business with us. And we've had a lot of good luck doing that, where people are very engaged in our brand. A lot of leads come through LinkedIn. But obviously I had no brand or anything to speak to when I first started. So the thing I did was I was actually looking for open job recs. So I would go to job search and I would find a company that had a job that they hadn't filled in 30, 60, 90 days. There was something that I could do, like a cybersecurity type job. And I would find the hiring manager or the likely hiring manager, and I would reach out to them and say, hey, I'm an independent consultant. I see you've had this job for 90 days. I'm guessing these are probably some of the problems you have. I'd love to come help you out until you fill that position or permanently as a contractor. And a lot more people ignored me than responded, but I did get some responses. Either people say, thank you, no, not right now, and maybe it was something later. But I got one or two. Actually, my first gig that I told you about, the $30,000 engagement, was doing that technique. Is I reached out to someone and they said, yes, come to the office. We need some help now. I have a pending deadline. And that worked several times very early on.
Interesting idea to try. So you are teaching on LinkedIn. You also have a YouTube channel. You have a newsletter. We will include links to all those in the show notes, but tell us what now, and we'll include it in the show notes, where are the best places for people to find you online?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I post almost every day on LinkedIn. I do some videos on LinkedIn occasionally, do a lot of learning. I post all the courses that we do on LinkedIn. So if you just search Christian Hyatt in LinkedIn, that's the number one place to find me. And then if you're really interested in cybersecurity, you can go to YouTube and just look up Risk 360. And we have a ton of good playlists. We even do a weekly cybersecurity executive brief that many of your clients might find interesting, where we talk about the top risk and news from the last week. So that's every single week. So those are two good places that people can find me.
And tell us a little bit behind the scenes about that content creation. Do you have some people who are, helping with the back end administration of that? Tell us about, how you're getting that content out there.
Yeah, so we do have a marketing team. We have three folks that help us out in marketing, but they do very little of our individual content. Funny enough, this might be the wrong way to do it, but what I have found is very hard for me to outsource effectively to a ghostwriter. You can outsource some video editing and stuff, but the best results I have had is being extremely authentic, having my voice, being a thought leader, and just trying to give that stuff away. And I don't think that's going to work for everyone because I spend a fair amount of time doing that. But it works for me. We've even got our practice leaders. So we in other technical areas that produce content regularly. We call them media properties. So for me, my media property is LinkedIn. I'm very focused in on that. The guy who does ethical hacking, our offensive security, he does the weekly cybersecurity executive brief. So that's a weekly thing, helped produced by our marketing team. One of our implementations and audit practice leader, he does something called the Bytes series. So ISO is a framework. So he'll do ISO Bytes or NIST Bytes, where he's breaking up these frameworks into little bite-sized chunks and put them on YouTube. So bottom line is each of us have a content pillar that we're dedicated to. It's up to us to come up with the content and the format that resonates with the audience. And then behind the scenes, we have a marketing team that's supporting us with video editing or just being an accountability partner. So that's how it's worked for us. Early on, though, I was literally doing it all myself. I had a video editor, a tool that I would use. I would record the videos. I'd write all the white papers. So this is kind of a recent, like last couple years development. Early on, it was very much do it yourself.
Amazing. All right, Christian Hyatt, we will include those links in the show notes for people that are interested in checking it out, as well as a link to your LinkedIn profile. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it, man.